I'm sure people out there are looking at this thinking, hey, we lost 3-0. What are these three clowns talking about?
All right, guys, it's been a testing few days for Singapore. Capped off rather a troublesome trip with a 3-0 reverse last night. To get your thoughts on that, maybe Roshan, we start with you.
Listen, it's been testing for me having to talk to you, Raushan, over the last few days as well about all these Singapore matches. I mean, this is my weekend also. You're giving me a call, disturbing me on Zoom. Can you come and give me your opinion and all that? Yeah. You're lucky I like you. You're lucky.
No, not my fault. You're good at giving opinions. And you see today, I never just disturbed you. Okay, tell me if you like what you saw. Tell me if you like what you saw last night.
I like your jersey first of all. Let's get that out of the way. I like that you're wearing the jersey. I think it says a lot, you know. No, it's brilliant. And what I liked about Singapore as well in that game against Saudi Arabia, I thought the setup was different. You know, the formation wise, I think it was that back five with the three and then the two, and then they didn't press. You know, we saw against Palestine, we saw against Uzbekistan. They had this pressing game. They wanted to go out and play a little bit higher up the pitch, and they sort of got torn apart really because the gaps. And we've touched on this, Roshan, in a couple of our other recordings where we did some analysis of those games, where the gaps were just too far between the lines. There was no compactness in the team. So actually, this game against Saudi Arabia, they changed that formation, they changed their style, they changed their tactics going into this game a little bit. 5-3-2, as I mentioned, very compact in between the lines. They didn't bother to press higher up against the pitch. They just sort of set back closer towards the halfway line. And then sort of when Saudi Arabia got into those areas, then they started to engage. Then they started to apply that little bit of pressure on Saudi Arabia. And they made it very difficult, very frustrating for Saudi Arabia because they struggled to really create high-quality opportunities in this game. I thought Singapore, had that cohesion a lot better in terms of that cohesion, working together, shifting across together very well, aggressive to close down when they needed to be. And then that midfield three, that line of three, Hami, Shadan, and Zulfami, I think it was, shifted across laterally very quickly as well. And they helped their wingbacks out defensively, which is what I like. So they really worked as a unit in those areas. And that's where the threats of Saudi Arabia were, especially on the left-hand side with Al-Dosari and Al-Sharani. So I thought it was so important for them to work as a team. And they did that really well for about 80 minutes or so. And then, guys, unfortunately, we know what sort of happened. But look, I think it was a much improved performance. I think this sort of style suits them against some of the bigger boys in Asia. What do you guys think?
I think Raj. I agree with Rosh there. And the one person that really came away for me with his reputation enhanced was Tatsuma Yoshida, because we've talked about how as a national team, you're only restricted to the players you can you have available. You can't go and buy someone to be Singaporean, or you could, but that's a different topic altogether. But having that same set of players, seeing it fail for the first 2 games, and then to like Rosh said, to come up with something new. It's not about what's trendy, counter pressing, high press, or tiki taka. It's not about what's trendy that Singapore fans should be looking for Singapore to do. It's about what is best for the team. And against a team like Saudi Arabia, I think the tactic worked brilliantly, as Roshan pointed out. So it was really heartening to see a far improved display, and the boys and the manager deserve credit for that.
I was just going to say very quickly, Gabe. Sorry, Roshan, just to jump in very quickly, is that I'm sure people out there are looking at this thinking, hey, we lost 3-0. What are these 3 clowns talking about? Right? What kind of positives are you looking at? Really, some of the aspects of the game, there were lots of positives to sort of look at. And yes, they fell away in the last 10 minutes, but we're all about trying to do some sensible analysis here, if I pat myself on the back by saying that. And I think a couple of players I wanna sort of give a lot of credit to. I thought Hami Shaheen was excellent, brilliant in central midfield, very clever with how he used the ball, and he wasn't afraid to put himself about as well. I mean, I think Al-Dosari was actually very lucky not to get sent off for that kick out, that bit of retaliation, Raushan. I know you feel the same way as well.
I mean, completely. And he went on to score the first goal against us. Okay, that happened in the 80th minute. But the moment he scored, I was like, this guy shouldn't even be on the pitch. But to Gabe's point, people who came away with enhanced reputations, one of them was Hami Shaheen. He really stood out for me in the middle of the park. Considering how young he is, to come in and put in the shift that he did. And we need legs in that midfield. Let's be honest here. Shadan and Yasser don't provide us legs in midfield. Hami was that player. And we talked about, the last time I spoke to you, Rosh, I said the Saudi game is where we want to see players for the future. And I think Hami came in and proved that he might be the one for the future. And it's exciting because when Haris comes back, then we might have a midfield duo there together with possibly Saifullah coming in and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So to that point, we talk about the positives. Gabe, I want to get your opinion on this actually, because yesterday we showed in glimpses that we have something going forward. Yes, we are missing a big striker for us, but overall, in the striking department, where to from here? Because we showed we can defend well. We showed in midfield we have nifty players to come in, but in attack, is there still a big worry for Singapore?
I think when everyone's fit, it's fine. You know, obviously, Ilhan Fandi, we've seen him really progress. He's still young, by the way, but you know, he's really taken up that mantle of the leading number one striker for the national team. So when he's there, I'm less concerned. But I guess the crux of my main point for the argument I made was that when he's not there, the fact that we're throwing in his younger brother into the deep end, that's you know, that's not a criticism of the coaching nor the player. It's just that we don't have anyone. And I think we have to be very realistic here as well, because we've gone on a lot about how Singapore used to naturalize players. It's not the long-term answer. You know, we've gone with this, you know, a minimum number of under 23 locals that have to be playing. Again, we don't know the full benefits to that. So I just want the fans as well to be very realistic and not just say no matter what, we are still not naturalizing players, because you know, if national service continues to be a hindrance as well, and you know, from 18 to 21 or whatever, you know, these players don't get you know, a real go at playing senior football. Naturalization could be the way. Again, it's all a case by case basis. But I think the future, the way forward, is just being open to whatever could be the answer. Because right now we know that national service is still a big issue, and we are nowhere closer to it being resolved.
You know what? Yeah, carry on, Roshan.
No, Rosh, you made some excellent points that Gabe has alluded to as well. So I want to find out your opinions as well on this. The way forward, where to from here? We've hopefully learned, and then it has to improve. Onwards and upwards is something I wrote on Twitter. I see it a lot on Twitter. But what is the way onwards and what is the way upwards?
See, the thing is, right, what we see now in football is a product of what's happened over the last 10, 15 years or so. You know, what's happened in terms of youth development and situations.
What has happened?
When you've constantly got technical directors who are changing every few years, Singapore football structure in terms of the youth development. Sometimes there are under 16 teams, sometimes there are like 5, 6 youth teams, sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 2, sometimes they got no youth teams at all. So it's sort of what we're seeing from the situation back in the past, and these are the results now. And whenever something new launches, people always talk about, you'll see the results 10 years down the road, you see the results 15 years down the road. So think about that. What happened 10, 15 years ago? How were we developing players back then? And that's the result of what we're sort of getting now, what we're seeing now. So hopefully lessons have sort of been learned. But then again, it's one of those things where, again, you're sort of starting afresh, so to speak. So you're only going to start to see players coming along maybe 5, 10 years from now. I mean, I think we do have the players. I wanted to jump in just now early on when you were talking about players like Saifullah. You mentioned Hami. We think about those sorts of players that have the potential to come in. Khairin Nadim as well, someone from Young Lions who potentially could be a striker, another striking option for Singapore in the future. There is going to be a period of a little bit of pain, that understanding that where we are as a footballing nation, we're not at Asia's top elite level. We're like maybe in that second, or maybe not even the second, but the third tier ranking of Asian football at the moment. And I think the next sort of stage of Asian Cup qualifying is realistic. It's something realistic for us. And I'm actually pretty optimistic about our chances in there. And I think that will give us a better gauge of where Singapore football is at the moment. I mean, Gabe touched on naturalization, and I think that is an option. It certainly is. It's not something that we can discount, because we see it happening to a lot of countries around the world, and especially in this part of the world, in Southeast Asia. But me personally, I always think that international football should be about how good your development systems are. And if you're doing well on the international stage, you're producing your own players, then that's your reward for having a good structure, a good development system of your youth coaches can pat themselves on the back and say, we've done a good job, we've produced quality players for the nation. And then we sort of don't really need to look beyond our shores. We can produce our own players. We can be proud of the fact that these are our local boys running up and down the pitch, winning games for us. So yes, I'm not going to discount naturalization. That is definitely something to look at. And also, not just naturalization, players with Singaporean heritage. That's another opportunity for Singapore to look at. But personally, I would like to see the infrastructure being put in place, the plans being put in place, and for us to have that determination to see it through despite the short-term pain, because we did have naturalized players in the short-term game to win trophies in the short term on a regional level. We never had a longer-term plan, Gabe.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And with what your point on policies, which I completely agree, and is so much revolves from what you mentioned. We have all these policies. It takes 10 years to see a technical director's dream fulfilled, and then they leave after 2 years. So we keep getting set back from the 10-year plan by 2 years and 2 years. And what I want is just policies that are they're being accountable for, because again, Roshan touched on the youth teams. Remember, we had a youth team that was for players not in the national setup. We had a national team not for the national team. It was so confusing. We have so many youth teams, so many under 21, under 23. So I don't mind that. I don't mind policy. So again, naturalization, heritage, or even really focusing on youth. All these are policies. I don't mind any of them, but there needs to be accountability, and the people need to answer. It's not a question about pointing fingers or saying you owe me an answer, but having the maturity or the mindset where we've tried something and we're going to be honest about whether it worked or not. Because that whole under 23 minimum, we have to have 3 or however many players in the starting lineup, and then to see the national team have mostly from the age bracket of 27 to 32. So can we at least get an answer on whether or not that policy has worked? Because based on this, maybe not. So I just want to see, for me, the way forward is having policies, having plans, and saying whether it failed or not, and then trying to go over again.
We talk about policies, we talk about plans. I think one more is needed. One more P word is needed, and that's patience. I think the fans who I've seen
me with that third P word, man.
Honestly, I'm just sitting down here looking at some of those comments online. To your point, score is 3-0. What are these three fools talking about? There's so much more to the game that you need to give before you want to take, and that's my point. And I think patience is so thin with these fans these days, only because we are spoiled. Because right now you switch on your TV, you watch Premier League players, and you expect the same quality, but what's been done to create that quality, I think that's what's severely lacking, and that is the biggest issue. And if we give the team patience, and I do believe in Tatsuma, I'm just going to say this on record, I do believe in him, provided he's given the right infrastructure and the right people around him to build a project for the long term. Because otherwise, to Gabe's point, 2 years, setback, 2 years, setback. And then every 2 years, we're going to jump on a call like this and have the same repeated conversation. So yeah, that's what really hurts for me.